In Marland, Mikleo and Sori reunite. Then they head to purify the tainted waters. Mikleo, being the water seraph, recites his slogan and begins to purify the flowing water. In 3 days, Mikleo purified much of the water. If Sori alone does the restoration process, it would take him a month to do it to this extent. As they walk through the streets of Marland, Layla tells Sori that she and Edna were talking about how he is growing more like a shepherd. Edna denies it. Meanwhile, villagers call Sori. Sori smiles and then walks toward the villagers. After that, Sori and the Seraphim reach an old building that contains several book racks. Sori asks Rohan the Seraph if he is okay. Rohan tells that he had been a Seraph who protects Marland, but was consumed by malevolence and changed into a drake. But now, he is in much better health. Rohan feels ashamed for becoming tainted when he was supposed to be protecting the town. Sori then asks Rohan how Marland became the place with hatred. Rohan assumes that it started when someone took a valued book without consent. Attack admits the pain Rohan is going through. He says that the loss begins with something minor and then it spreads. Rohan recognizes Attack as a Norman seraph and says that they used to work with Seraphim in the past. There used to be a lot of Normans, but they diminished over time. Alicia then comes in with the food stuff. When they are enjoying the stew, Alicia thanks Sori and Seraphim for purifying the well water. The Seraphim listen to Alicia's words of gratitude and smile at her sincerity. Sori learns that the situation in the town is getting better now. Alicia then asks for Sori's help with sorting out supplies for reconstruction from Lady Lake. Sori accepts, and he starts helping. Once Sori finishes, he overhears Alicia ordering her troops about the supplies. She says that the supplies must be divided equally and hoarding will not be allowed. Sori praises Alicia for her hard work. Meanwhile, Sparrowfeathers arrives with a carriage containing the food supplies from the Lady Lake. Rose immediately recognizes Alicia to be the princess, but Alicia tells her that she's just a knight here. As they're about to shake hands, Sori appears and greets Rose. She notices that Sori became the shepherd and says that if he remembers the debt he owes her. Rose wonders what she should ask from him, but Sori tells her that being the shepherd doesn't mean he's rich. She gestures toward Alicia and says that he has a friend who has loads of money and valuables. Then Rose smiles and says she's just kidding. After that, Sparrowfeathers goes on ahead to unload the food, and Moltran arrives. A soldier, Cyril, accompanying Moltran, tells Alicia that Bartlow ordered troops to march on the Glavian Basin. Alicia reveals that the basin is the buffer zone between Highland and Rowlance. It means Bartlow is going to start the war. Alicia decides to go to the location and stop it. Sori will also come along. Meanwhile, Layla notices a Hellion's presence in an alleyway. Sori and the Seraphim enter the street. As they traverse, they notice the strongest malevolence presence in front of the house. Sori carefully opens the door and enters the house. Meanwhile, Hellion appears in the room. Sori charges in and slices the Hellion, but once his sword touches it, something odd happens and Sori knocks onto the crate. The Hellion rushes out. Sori gets back up and chases it. It again swings its sword at Hellion, but instantly falls to the ground. Fortunately, the Hellion is purified. Sori becomes exhausted and tells Mikleo that he didn't know the risks of purifying a human that turned into a Hellion. On the other hand, Alicia gets prepared to go into the battlefield and talks with her troops about the fastest route from Lady Lake to Glavian Basin. Meanwhile, Sori and Seraphim walk through the graveyard. They stop in front of a certain grave that belongs to the man who turned into a Hellion. He stabs the sword onto the ground to purify the man's soul. In the castle, Alicia notices the absence of guards. The scattered bones show up, attempting for Alicia's life once again. Alicia looks at them and tells them she's too busy to be dealing with them. One assassin strikes her, but she blocks the attack and knocks that person down. Alicia knocks her back and then points her dagger toward Rose. Rose learns that Alicia goes to the battlefield to stop the war, but she believes that Alicia's non-aggression policy will get people killed, and they won't revive even if the war ends. Rose says that any one of the victims will sow new seeds of hatred. Alicia then tells Rose to let that first victim be herself. As she points Rose's dagger to her throat, Rose is surprised by Alicia's words and actions. Alicia warns Rose that if she dies on the battlefield, she already forgives the person who will kill her or the situation that will cause her life to end, so that hatred must not be passed on to the children of the people. Alicia asks Rose to prepare to head for Glaven Basin in the morning. Before heading off to Glaven Basin, Sori and his Seraphim friends head back to Marland for farewell to Rohan. Meanwhile, Alicia appears and asks Sori to come with her. Alicia discusses her plan of action for the war with Sori and Marland. They then head to the battlefield. On the way, a soldier named Ian joins them and greets Alicia. She then has a fun chat with Cyril. It turns out that Cyril and Ian are childhood friends. As Ian starts chattering about some moments she had with Cyril when they were younger, Alicia interrupts as they are going to a battlefield. Lan then notices Sori and finds that he is the shepherd. She draws his attention and then stares at him. Lan tells him that she imagined him to be a robust man, as he has killed a dragon and then burned it to a crisp. She then asks Sori for his hand. As she holds it, she becomes happy, and Sori chuckles. After that, Alicia asks for the details from Ian and learns that Bartlow sends up to 20,000 Highland troops. At Glaven Basin, Landon, a commander of Highland's military, seems to enjoy the foggy weather as he has a glass of wine. He asks his troops to impose a surprise attack on Rolance. On the other hand, Alicia's force stops on the way to take a nap. When she wakes through the night, Sori stops her and learns that she is going to fetch water from the nearby river. Sori then accompanies her. Sori shares his thoughts with Alicia and says that, as the shepherd, he will play his role to stop the war, and will not be armor of Hayland or Rolance. The war starts. Landon learns that Roland's troops have attacked some Highland troops on the rear part of their domain. Roland's commander, Sergei, becomes angry on the other commanders as they violated the treaty between the forces. Alicia, along with his friends, reaches the Glaven Basin and sees that war is already started. Alicia decides to meet with General Landon and figure things out. Sori looks over a cliff to see the chaos in the battlefield. The arrows decimate the soldiers. Some soldiers catapult cannonballs covered in fire. Highland and Rolance soldiers are battling on the front lines. Their actions release more malevolence. Witnessing this, Layla states that Hellions are born from hatred, pain, and anger. Sori jumps off the cliff and lands on the battlefield. When Alicia and her troops traverse through the fog, arrows pierce through the fog and land on some of the soldiers. Cyril protects Alicia from the arrows with her blade. Lan then fires arrows through the fog and hits all the Rolance soldiers. Maltron tells Alicia to take the bypath as they'll hold off the soldiers. Then Alicia and Rose reach the Highland base. She then tells Landon to send a messenger to the Rolance army to cease the war immediately. Landon rejects her orders and then orders his soldiers to capture her. Sori passes through the battlefield and swings his blade to purify the tainted soldiers. He sees that the feeling of hatred and despair are the causes of the malevolence of soldiers in both sides. It's too much for Sori to handle, and he falls onto his knees. On the order of Landon, soldiers attack Alicia and Rose to make them captured, but Alicia and Rose defeat a majority of the soldiers. Amid the smoke, Sori uses different spells and continues his goal of purifying the battlefield. He fires his arrows at the Roland soldiers. Back with Alicia and Rose, Rose realizes that the soldiers are serious about Landon's orders and reaches her hands for her weapons. Alicia tells her to not use daggers. Rose then aims at the soldiers with Alicia. One knocks Alicia to the ground and strikes Alicia, but she dodges. Rose barely dodges an attack and then regroups with Alicia. Meanwhile, a soldier stabs Alicia. She falls onto her knees as she loses blood. Sori then uses Arrow Squall to finish the remaining soldiers, but collapses. Meanwhile, Sori senses malevolence coming from something else. Although exhausted, he rushes off to another area and sees that there are many more soldiers fighting with each other. On the other hand, Alicia confidently tells her assailant to wipe her blood off or his sword will rust. The soldier drops the sword as he freaks out. Meanwhile, a blast of wind blows the soldiers away. Alicia realizes that the wind was the work of a seraph. Sori and his companions hear explosions and turn around to see a massive amount of malevolence in the domain of the battlefield. The shadow in the malevolence looks like a human. Sori realizes that the Hellion in the malevolence is the Lord of Calamity. Rose is appalled by the Highland soldiers for stabbing Alicia. She puts Alicia towards a pillar and apologizes to her. Rose then turns toward the soldiers and manages to take Landon hostage. She severely orders Landon to cease fire. Fortunately, the order is followed as Highland soldiers surrender. Simon, the Dark Seraph, gets disappointed as the battle ceased. Sori and the Seraphim sense the strong malevolence of the Lord of Calamity. Sori can see the Hellion inside the malevolence and recognizes it as a human Hellion, but he can't see a human form. Sori then rushes inside the malevolence with Mikleo following behind. Sori manages to find the Lord of Calamity and says that being the shepherd will purify him. Simon gets angry at Sori's words, but the Hellion seems intrigued with Sori's presence. The Helldolf just chuckles and taunts Sori. Sori charges toward him with his sword, but Helldolf blocks his attack. Meanwhile, Sori glimpses Helldolf's human appearance inside the malevolence. Sori then attacks back on Helldolf with the different spells, but he blocks all of his attempts. Helldolf then attacks him, causing Sori to be knocked back. Helldolf then blows his malevolence shield away, inflicting countless amount of Hellions onto the battlefield. Sori grips his sword tightly to attack Helldolf, but Layla halts him and says that they are not strong enough to deal with him right now. Helldolf laughs and then orders the malevolence and the Hellions to come back to him. Helldolf then strikes all the malevolence onto Sori. Sori struggles to purify malevolence and manages to deflect it, but the Hellions sprawl out. Helldolf taunts Sori by saying that he's purifying the malevolence for the sake of humans, but that it was humans who caused it. Sori lets out that he has faith that he will purify the world one day. Helldolf then states that as long as humans exist, malevolence will never disappear. Sori fervently states that he believes that there will be a day when humans and Seraphim can live together. He then yells and jumps up to purify the Hellions. On the other hand, Maltran and the other guards manage Alicia's wound. Cyril goes to check the aid unit. Alicia slowly wakes up and asks Maltran if the fighting has stopped. Maltran replies that it did. Alicia smiles and then closes her eyes. Rose is worried, so she runs off to find Sori. Back to Sori. He is still purifying the Hellions. Helldolf asks Sori to survive and to become the only hope for humans so that his death will be a major sadness for everyone. Helldolf then leaves with Simone. Sori gets thrown back. Mikleo then uses water spells on some of the Hellions, as Seraphim cannot fully purify the Hellions, so they help Sori with dispersing the Hellions. After that, Sori finishes purifying all the Hellions. Rose manages to catch up to him, but a Hellion sneaks up to Sori. Dezel manages to restrain it, and Sori finishes it off. Rose takes Sori back to where Alicia is resting. Sori puts a blanket over her. As he watches over her, he notices Alicia's thoughts about their first encounter. Sori is glad that he met Alicia as well. Alicia is his first human friend, so she means a lot to him. Perhaps their encounter was the reason Sori was able to have faith in his dream. Alicia then decides to return to Lady Lake, so she can struggle on the political platform to prevent wars. Then Sori asks Alicia to become his squire. Alicia is worried about being a burden, but Sori assures her that he will become stronger. She smiles, and then accepts his offer. Layla recites the incantation, and then Sori gives her the name Melphis Amekia. She thanks Sori, and then sees the Seraphim for the first time. She smiles with tears of joy. In the morning, Sori and Alicia decide to part ways. Meanwhile, a Hellion attacks Sori. Alicia finds that the being is Landon, who became a Hellion. Landon is angry, as his plan had failed. Landon wants to take their heads to Bartlow to get the power. He also believes that Alicia is an ignorant princess. Rose then tells Sori that he's the one who attacked Alicia. Sori becomes furious and approaches Landon. Sori tries to suppress his emotion and then manages to purify Landon. Alicia tells Sori that she will take Landon back to Lady Lake and have his trial in court. Then they finally part ways. Rose asks Sori to come with her, as she wants him to help her in negotiating with someone in Rowlands.